Born to Achieve. Born to Achieve. Welcome to Born to Achieve podcast, the show that inspires and motivates you to unlock your full potential and achieve your goals. With your host, Warren Andrew Pinder. Let's get started on this week's episode of Born to Achieve. Born to Achieve.
I am born to achieve, and so are you. On this episode of the Born to Achieve Greatness podcast, we have with us Mr. Warren Shore. Warren is a seasoned journalist with stops at Yahoo Sports, Time Magazine, and other notable outlets before turning his attention to the podcast industry. His measured and human-first approach to storytelling fuels the passion he brings as a co-owner of 19 Media Group, host of Dope Interviews, co-host of the network flagship show, and the Baseline NBA podcast. Welcome, Warren.
Warren as well. Thank you so much for having me on here. And it was great to have connected with you in the way that we did to make this happen.
Oh, thank you very much. Warren's, as we say, born to achieve greatness. So I'm glad to have met another Warren aspiring to do the same. Today, we want to really bring home to our listeners, in particular young men, right? What are the expectations of basketball players aspiring to play in the NBA? What percentage of players will make the NBA, and how to manage one's expectation of not making it and moving on?
Wow. I mean, so those are very loaded questions, right? And I think when you're talking about young men and women, I think at this stage we're trying to play professional basketball in general. The percentages are very small. It's like I don't have the actual statistics, if you will, like it's 3% of the population or whatever the case may be. But making the league or making any league in any sport is one that requires a certain level of dedication. And I can even take this back to I played in high school and I did not work hard enough to be flat out honest with you. I remember being very good in middle school, and then the high school coach is like, I need you to do these things over the summer and ray, blah, blah, blah. I didn't do those things. And it showed immediately when I came back. And I think, where we're at now in today's society, that work ethic, yes, you have to have a natural talent. You have to have, like those kind of God-given gifts, but you have to work on it literally every single day. And because there is somebody down the street, up the road, around the corner, another country or whatever, who's working harder than you, or just as hard, maybe in some instances, to try to get into that same spot. And I think when it comes to playing professionally, you have to be able to stand out from the crowd. So a lot of people want to get caught up in what you see in TV today in terms of like the highlight era, 3-point shooting and, slam dunking on people and so forth, but not understanding it's the intangibles. It's the coachability. It's those things that allow you to stand out from your competition in a lot of ways. Do you slide your feet defensively? Do you communicate when you're on defense? Can you take charges? All those things can help you get to the league if you're willing to work at it. And they're not always, and excuse my French, the most sexiest things. They're not the things that get heralded in a lot of ways. But for me and from what I've seen, it's the work ethic, it's the time, it's the dedication, it's the passion, and it's not getting caught up in the hoopla and the hype of being a celebrity and or star, no matter what level you're at. Because even now, young folks, they are celebrities, right? You're 12 years old and people are watching you on YouTube already. That didn't really happen in my day, so to speak, not to date myself, but that wasn't a situation. So you have to be able to stay focused in a way that's where everything is trying to detract from you. But listen to your coaching, listen to the ones who really love you and are down for you. And then that at least gives you somewhat of a leg up in addition to the talent. But to me, it's not just talent in today's society. It's so much more about the intangibles and, wanting to be a good player that may not always do all the things that are statistically heralded in today's society.
Great. We all, to really achieve greatness, we are all taught to set goals, and there are so many young men in our communities that have a goal or aspire to make the league. Help them to understand that managing their expectations and preparing for an alternative path if they weren't to make the league.
Yeah, that part is, I think, immensely important. Um, we'll see today, and as we're recording, I don't know when this will air, but we're in the midst of what will be March Madness and all the college basketball stuff that's going to be coming about. And a lot of great talent is going to be showcased and have different opportunities. Maybe not even play in the NBA, but maybe they'll go overseas or play somewhere else. But more of those guys, whatever it is, 95% of that will not, right? This will be the only time, this will be the air quote highlight of their basketball playing career. So what are you doing to prepare yourself, in essence, to be successful as a man, as an individual, as a contributing member of society? Are you taking your studies and your lessons, seriously? But this is a weird thing. This is a weird thing for me to say, but I truly believe in today's society, there's more than one way to be successful. And traditionally, yes, it's like your lessons, you go to college, you do the things, and you get your degree and so forth and so forth. But you can contribute to society and or become successful in a multitude of ways. But are you taking the time to invest in what that is? And that's not, being out on the street or, doing whatever, that's, of things that we don't want to discuss here on this podcast, right? It's like, all right, well, do you want to learn a trade? Can you even invest in a way that that you can invest in social media and become whatever that is? If it's some sort of social media influencer, there's a career for a path in that. And while I don't necessarily have to subscribe and suggest that, hey, this is what you should do, there's a path to it if you take it seriously. But it takes work. It's hard work. You got to study algorithms and understand the posting schedules. So if you don't want to go the traditional route in terms of like getting the piece of paper, if you will, that bachelor's degree, that master's degree, that doctorate, or whatever the case would be, there's another path. But either way, you need to be preparing yourself for what life is after basketball, after sports, whatever it is, because there's so few people that are able to kind of get to that pinnacle. And then even fewer people were able to stay at that pinnacle for a sustained amount of time, because a lot of things, I don't want to get too far into it, but money comes at you fast, and then you blow through your money, then you don't take things seriously. And it's a very, very short window. And to fast forward only slightly, that's why you see so many players entering the podcasting and the media space here now, because they recognize, let's take a guy like Draymond Green, is like, hey, I got to set myself up for life after basketball. And so they're very, very smart and strategic in their approach to doing these things. So, if nothing else from this very, very long-winded answer, I think it's a matter of being strategic from the very, very beginning for whatever it is that you want to go. So if you have a short window to play basketball, great. But are you setting yourself up for life after basketball? And life after basketball can come sooner than later, depending on your talent level.
Thank you for joining today's podcast. We'll be right back.
Achieve Man, written by Warren Andrew Pinder and Dominique Bradford. This book passionately focuses on the challenges women have been made to go through and how to overcome them. In some cultures, being a woman disadvantages the girl child. This book carefully exposes the hurdles you might face. This masterpiece is the ultimate self-help guide for women. It reveals your true purpose and identity. Get your copy today. Available from Amazon.
We now return to today's podcast.
Man, Warren, what you have just described is like, developing transferable skills. It's coming from basketball, that what you learn, putting the discipline and everything toward what it is that the next side of your journey. Exploring the, related careers or such. I read something this evening that an HBCU basketball player has not been drafted since 2010. And I correlate that. I say that as in correlation to, those who are really aspiring. We're trying to create the mindset or present a mindset to a young man to understand that, you're good, you're talented, but the likelihood, like you explained so eloquently in your introduction, the percentage may be low, as low as 3%. We don't know that. But the fact that there's not been a player drafted since 2010, can you expand on that? Can you say something about that?
Well, there's a couple of things that I could probably say, and I wouldn't want to, careen us too far into a conversation that might be maybe not meant for this show. However, the exposure that HBCUs have traditionally got has always been less than it should. So I think that's where it probably starts, right? Mm-hmm. And then I think it's also even, Black players, if you will, if they traditionally, if they had to choose before a traditional D1 school or an HBCU, they would choose a D1 because of that same thing I just said. The exposure level is not there. So it's not even so much as the talent at all times in terms of the HBCU was less than. It's a matter of the exposure is less than in general. And that's something that I think league officials and scouts need to collectively work at hand in hand, in essence, to try to fix. And we're seeing some of that here now, especially with Chris Paul's focus on the HBCU initiatives and that takes place at NBA All-Star weekends, and the like. There is more exposure for those players in that demographic. And now we just need to ensure that the talent level and the exposure is matching that opportunity for what could potentially be, somebody to be drafted in that. In the height of the pandemic, we did see a couple of top recruits, in essence, at least flirt around with going to HBCUs and trying to say, hey, you know what? Hey, Sam, hey, Joe, hey, I'm going to go to XYZ HBCU. Why don't you come with me? And it was I wouldn't say a movement, but it was an opportunity that did present itself for a short window. And I don't follow college close enough to really speak eloquently enough on this, but I don't know how much it really continued after, that pop that you had, especially after the George Floyd, unfortunate murder, if you will, when BLM and the whole movement was getting so much attention. Has that now since continued since 2021 and now into 2025? I don't know the answer to that. But again, from your original question, it's unfortunate that we haven't seen many people drafted from HBCUs. And hopefully it's something that we can have change in the short term with some of the highlights that I think the NBA specifically is trying to do to ensure that population is recognized for the hard work and dedication that they're providing.
Great. From the international scene, you have a lot of players really making an impact in the league to date. I'm from the Bahamas, right? And we've made our contribution in a significant way, starting with Michael Thompson being the first international drafted player. And then there are players in the league right now. Buddy Hield, you have some real players that are still in the league making a contribution. How difficult do you think it was making that transition to the big stage? I had an opportunity to speak to someone, and I think I heard that it's like only 400 and definitely less than 500 players in the entire NBA.
Yep.
What type, and that's huge.
Yeah. So you're touching on a topic that I've been thinking about literally for years. And so while I may not sound it, depending on who I'm talking to, my parents are Jamaican, so I have a lot of interest in the Caribbean and the development of Caribbean communities, point blank, period. Say that again.
Patrick Ewing.
Yeah, Pat Ewing, definitely, from back in the day. So then, by proxy, his son, had a cup of coffee in the league as well, too. There's a guy in
Alden Polonese.
Yeah. And then there's a guy in Charlotte now, Nick Richards. He's in Phoenix now. He's in Phoenix. So he's of Jamaican descent as well, too. So again, there's a couple of guys, Jerome Jordan, Ramil Robinson, some others as well, too, have been in the league, of Jamaican heritage. And so my point really is that, I've seen the league do so much in even Mexico. And obviously, in the BAL, it's African league that there's a lot of resources that have gone to various regions of the world, if you will, not so much the Caribbean. And I guess it's because the thought process is that in the Caribbean is like, all right, well, people want to play soccer or they want to play cricket. And while that is true, there is also a strong contingent of people who do like basketball. And so I would love to see at some point, because I actually started to do some research and reaching out. I think I had reached out to the Jamaican Basketball Association. I'd reached out to the Bahamas, and it's like, all right, I want to understand from the coaches in these national countries, if you will, what level of support are they receiving, if any, and resources from the NBA or other like leagues, even FIBA to a lesser degree. And while I never actually wrote that story, it's something I still have some research on, and it's something that it needs to be developed. And I think in some ways I don't know how to say this any other way than other to say it. It may take some semblance of like the unification, if you will, of like the Caribbean islands to be like, hey, we want development here. Bring stuff to us so that we can, you know what I mean, start to get more players from this region, which in what is truly an international game. So to go back to your earlier point as well, too, you know, when you talk about a guy like Buddy Hield and others, yeah, they ended up having to work really hard, get scouted. However, that ended up, I think, but he went to Oklahoma, right? And, you know, he ended up playing on a national stage in that regard. But what about, you know what I mean? Winthrop, or, you know, what about, you know, Dexter down there you know, in Trinidad? Like we don't get to see these individuals in a way that makes a lot of sense for their overall exposure. And I think, again, all this takes resources, but it also takes, I think, the voices of these nations, these islands to say, hey, take a look at what we're doing. Listen to us. Can we try to get some sort of a partnership in place here? Because I've seen development all in the Philippines and other places, and that's not to knock those other things. I think it's, hey, but can you move that developmental aspect, those resources around? You know what I mean? Hey, a year here, a year there, and try to spread it around to areas and regions that really do want to invest in the globalization of basketball.
Now for a commercial break.
Achieve Men, written by Warren Andrew Pinder. In this book, you will learn the 7 steps to achieving your dreams and goals. Given the vision to share how the acronym of the word achieve can be used systematically in your day-to-day life. Each of us is given a unique gift from God. Get your copy today. Available in print, ebook, and audiobook from Amazon.
We now return to today's podcast.
From the Bahamas, from the Bahamas, you know, we're a country of 400 persons there. You know, you got DeAndre Ayton in the league. We have, you know, Klay Thompson, you know, the son of Michael Thompson.
Sure.
So we, like I said, we have made that. NBA Cares, I know, is deep in Africa and a few other countries, international countries that they're helping to develop. We haven't seen that. I can tell you that some of these guys playing, like Bud Hield came from an island called Grand Bahama. You know, they play on a hard court, and they had to really work extremely hard. And it segues into the dream, the aspiration, you know, the goal, you know, staying mental toughness, trying to ensure that, you know, they set that prize as to where they want to go. You know, we have so many men following. I know a story of a young guy that really believed in his heart that he was an NBA. He was a product of the NBA. He had the talent to make it. And that's why, like, you know, I'm grateful to hear you saying that, you know, the lowered expectations of having an alternative plan. You know, upon working hard in the NBA, you could go to a lot of players I know played college ball, you know, whether from JUCO right on into, you know, D1. But it's getting them to understand that there has to be prioritized educational plan or you know, like say a career path beyond that dream that you have, maybe coaching, but something to that. Yeah,
I think that's so well said, because I think you can look at what current players are doing, as I said before, who are trying to set themselves up in the media space, doing what we're doing here now. Like, there's podcasting opportunities. Like, you can have a voice in pretty much anything and do so. I know legally in a way that can be lucrative. Right? And that's whether or not, and that can be with or without a degree. I mean, that's the reality of the situation. So there's no reason to not have a plan A, plan B, and C, I think, if necessary, and collaborate. We as a people tend to try to feel like, okay, well, I see this person make it, and then like I'm trying to beat them. I don't necessarily need to beat them. I can work with them. You know what I mean? And there's enough room for everybody. But most people don't have that mentality. So I think I said, well, I want to correct my statement, in what would be kind of like the day-to-day setting, if you will. There are only so many NBA jobs. And I think that's where, you know what I mean? It's just like, all right, you look at it from that lens, and then you got to transfer your thinking to understand. It's like, all right, well, if I'm working, not even necessarily 9 to 5, if I'm going to go be an entrepreneur, I have to compete. And I think, again, you can collaborate in a way and still be successful. So I hope anybody who's listening or tapping into this can recognize that fact. And while that's not to say that you have to give up on whatever your dream is, especially if it's pursuing a sport, but there needs to be a plan B and potentially C, I think, in some cases, because life happens, and it comes first.
Certainly, man. Certainly. Warren, give our listening audience, right? They're going to ask, who's Warren Shore? Let us know exactly, this great achiever. Give us some insight as to where the wisdom is coming from on this show right now.
Well, I mean, I appreciate that, Warren. I really do. It's like, life experiences have definitely have forged who I am today. And what I will say is that I've learned from literally everything. And I tried very hard to not be a prisoner in the moment and understand what I'm experiencing and experiencing it in a real way, even if it's hurtful. And even if it's something that I didn't necessarily want to like or digest, is like, all right, I have to learn that proverbial lesson so that I can be better for whatever the next opportunity or next thing is. So while I can't sit here and tell you I've had like this super hard luck story, my parents were, middle class, I went to college and I had some great opportunities, but I've had my struggles like everybody else, and my main thing is to sit in the experience, whatever that experience is. Do not forget perspective, especially when you are able to climb and maybe get to the next level of whatever it is your career path is on. Like I sit in a leadership seat in my air quote, full-time job, but I tell my team all the time, like, hey, I didn't forget what it was to be the entry-level student. I didn't forget what it was to be the coordinator or the assistant director or the associate director or any mid-step along those ways. So I can relate to what you're going through. And I think people have a tendency, and I'm not saying I'm better than anybody, I want to be clear about that, but people have a tendency to rise and forget. And you can't forget how you got to where you got to and what it took to get there, because there's now people there looking up to you now, right? And so you have to be relatable to their experiences. And yes, things change and, times change. What it was 10 years ago isn't what it was 25 years ago. But sometimes, there's a lot of similarities and just in the climb in that of itself too. And that's where you got to try to tap into and remember. And for me, that's been, that's served me well. To just, that's why it's even in my bio, kind of a human first approach to it. Cause I refuse to see myself as better than anybody else. Like, and I always, people, I'm a supervisor by definition in my job. But I tell people like, hey, don't call me boss, or I'm uncomfortable with those types of platitudes. I'm like, hey, we're all working together, and it becomes kind of like tongue in cheek at some point, but like, I'm nobody's boss. Like, no one's the boss of me. I'm not the boss of anybody. Like, hey, we're working together to achieve a common goal. And that's what it really is all about. So just be good to people. And I think they'll be good back to you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Born to Achieve. Born to Achieve. We hope you found it informative, inspiring, and motivating. Born to Achieve. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and family. Stay focused on your goals, and we'll see you on the next episode of Born to Achieve.
Take advantage of this incredible opportunity. Sign up today and claim your free ebook at www.borntoachievegreatness.com. Follow us on Facebook at Achieve Movement Inc. Get your copy of Exploring Achieveland, A Journey to Realize Your Dreams, Motivational Stories of Kindness, Inspiring Stories for Kids on Amazon and Kindle.